Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to my channel. Today I feel thrilled to be joined by both Katza and Murphy here to talk about books I've rated 5 stars. This will make a lot more sense if you've seen like my Things Are Changing video, which came out in February. I say came out like it's a movie. Like it debuted in February, premiered in February, like I posted in February. That's way better to say it. Long story short, I used to read a lot and then like basically went through like a 4-year reading slump and here we are. Well, it's like 3 years kind of, 3.5-year reading slump. So I wanted to go over today the books that I've rated 5 stars, but some of these, like a couple of contemporaries, couple of classics, mainly fantasy because that's my favorite genre. Some of these things might feel a little random and I think that has a lot to do with the 3.5-year reading slump I had, and some of these might seem like I read them all within the last 7 to 8 months, which it's because I have. So this intro has gotten way too confusing, way too long, and none of you guys care, and I'm sorry for boring you half to death, but we're just gonna carry on from here. Let's go. Some of these things I will not get too much into because they're either parts of series or they're like in the middle of the series. I'm just not gonna get into it too much, but a lot of these books mean so much to me and we might have a difference of opinion, which is fine, but you should let me know if you feel a similar way about any of these books down in the comments. Okay? I feel like I'm gonna get the obvious out of the way. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I actually had like 1 or 2 gripes with this, but overall 5 out of 5 stars. I don't want to get into it too much. I just wish J.K. Rowling was not as prejudiced towards kids who have troubled home lives and sending them into what she depicts as an evil house, aka Slytherin. But Slytherins unite, because I'm a proud Slytherin. So I want to get into something that is one of the most beautiful stories of all time, and that is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. I actually saw the movie before I read the book. This movie came out like 2.5 years ago, I think. Incredible movie. It may not be the best movie of all time, it may not be my favorite movie of all time, but it is the most beautiful movie I've ever seen in my entire life. Like the most beautiful movie of all time. The story, the acting, the music, the cinematography, like everything was just perfect. If you're looking for something that's probably gonna make you cry, I would pick this book up, but I just think this is a really artistic, beautiful way of telling Connor's story. This is about an 11-year-old kid whose mom has cancer and it's his way of like coping with that, you know? It's worth a read. It's really quick, not very long. This particular version I think is 200 pages long, but like not a lot of text per page, and some pages have like some art on it and some pages have like a lot of art on it. You could get through this in one sitting. If you have like 2 hours, done. If you also have 2 hours, you could watch the movie. That's all I'm saying, because it's just as good. A book I read, I think this was November or December of last year, was the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. This is by Mary Ann Schaefer, and Annie Barrows. I actually also watched this movie first. This is a Netflix movie with Lily James as our main character, and I always forget his name, but he was in Game of Thrones. He played Dario, and he also was in Nashville for a hot minute, and when that show was halfway decent because that turned out being garbage. Anyways, oh, you know who was also in that movie? He was in Scream Queens. Shoot, I'll put a picture of him right here. Love him. He's come to be one of my favorite actors. Like anything he's in, I'm like, we should watch that, you know? Anyways, the movie became one of my favorite movies of all time. I don't know if it was just because it felt so wholesome and good and great story, great acting, but we have our main character Juliet, and she is a writer. Maybe that's another reason I like it. Anyways, long story short, her book ends up on the island of Guernsey, which is off the coast of England. I'm pretty sure it's in between England and France. The guy who has her book in that island ends up writing her, and they write back and forth. Anyways, it's so cute. This entire book is written in letters, and at one point it's written in like a diary form kind of, and it's just so beautiful. Very quick read. The only thing I will say is it leaves you wanting a lot more because it's all written in letters rather than like human, like, you know, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Brilliant book. I have nothing wrong to say with it. So cute. Love this and the movie. Both are 5 out of 5 stars. To kind of like switch things up, I'm gonna grab a fantasy book. I think this comes... Listen, I don't think I have to explain a lot about this, but this is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, also known as Akamath, also known as the sequel to ACOTAR, also known as A Court of Thorns and Roses. I'm gonna shut up. Listen, this was incredible. This series I started back in December, and I read this book. This is a heifer, by the way. Let's count the pages here. 630. And I read it in 2 days. I literally did nothing else except for read. Luckily, it was a weekend, and it was also a holiday weekend. I think it was around New Year's Eve, so I just soaked this baby up and probably barely slept at all. A Court of Thorns and Roses is like a kind of like a Beauty and the Beast retelling, although like very, very loose retelling. Very loose. Really enjoyed it. The first book, I rated 4 stars, I believe. Really loved it. Didn't really have much wrong with it. I just didn't love it to the ends of the earth, whereas this I do. 5 out of 5 stars. If you haven't read this series and you're on BookTube, I don't really believe you, first of all. And if you aren't on BookTube and you haven't read this series, I highly recommend giving A Court of Thorns and Roses a try. It's definitely a good book to get you into reading, or a good book to, like, even if you're not a big reader, to enjoy. You know what I mean? Great series. 5 out of 5 stars for that book in particular. Let's talk about something we all know and love, and that is Hunger Games, but not the first one, Catching Fire in particular. This is by Suzanne Collins. You guys all know the movies, if you haven't read the books at least, like Jennifer Lawrence, Liam Hemsworth, what's his name? I love him so much, and he's kind of like out of the, you know who's one of my favorite actors of all time? Woody Harrelson, and he is the perfect Haymitch. Sam Claflin is also one of my favorite actors of all time, and he is the perfect Finnick. The name I'm trying to remember is the guy who plays Peeta. Hutchins. His last name is Hutchins. What is his first name? Hutchins, not Hutchins. Hutcherson, Josh Hutcherson. Love the cast. Hunger Games is a fantastic book. I'm pretty sure I would rate it 4.5 out of 5 stars if I have the chance to reread it, which I'm hoping to do soon. But Catching Fire in particular is a 5 out of 5 star book for me. It is incredible. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I always remember the feelings I felt while reading this. I'm not massive fan of dystopian. I do like dystopian, it's just not my favorite genre, but this book, this series, so good. I really have been itching to reread these way bad lately, and I don't really have much else to say. We all know the story. We've all seen the movies. Who hasn't? Because we're all in love with Jennifer Lawrence. To get this next one out of the way, I have 3 books, but they're all from the same series. I'm not gonna say much about them because everyone knows about this series, and this is the Throne of Glass series, but not the first book. I did not love the first book. I enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 star, I think. But the books I'm talking about are Heir of Fire, Tower of Dawn, and the last one, Kingdom of Ash. There is a prequel, so if you're not counting prequel as book 1, this is book 3, this is book 6, and then Kingdom of Ash is book 7, even though there are 8 books. It's confusing. These were just the best books in my opinion. First of all, the third one is my favorite from the series, I think, although I do think it's really hard to tell between these 3 because I really do love these 3 a lot. I just feel like the author kind of fully understood where she was taking the series at this point, whereas in book 1 or 2, you're kind of just like, yeah, they're good books, they're enjoyable books, but like, where is the plot for this series? Whereas this truly like grabs the plot. It also adds some new characters that are incredible. They're very deep, very interesting, and they add to the plot a lot. I don't really want to talk more about it, or else this video will get way too long. Tower of Dawn I thought I was gonna hate because it's about a character that I don't love. Well, I do now, but I didn't love before. But said character really needed this plot and really needed this character development. The new characters that are also introduced into this, swoon worthy. I love Sartok, Nesrin, and Irene, however you say her name. 2 of my favorite characters of the series as well. Just really solid, and I can't really say much else about this. I did read this a little over a month ago. Loved it so much, but if I said anything else, it would give it away, other than the fact that everything comes to a close, resolutions are given, you know, character arcs come to a close, or whatever you want to call that. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Let's move on. Let's talk about a classic, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. If you know anything about me, you know that the 1920s, the roaring 20s, shall we, they are my favorite. I would do basically anything to have lived in that time period. Everything sounds beautiful in the 20s, okay? And I know everything has its faults, but The Great Gatsby is my favorite, one of my favorite books of all time. F. Scott Fitzgerald, I really like the way he writes. It's very descriptive, but not overly descriptive. One of my favorite paragraphs from any book is in this. Oh, I found it. It's when Nick meets Gatsby and he's talking about Gatsby's smile. Like he said, he smiled understandingly, much more than understandingly. It was one of those rare smiles with the quality of eternal reassurance in it that you may come across 4 or 5 times in your life. It faced or seemed to face the whole external world for an instant and then concentrated on you with an irresistible prejudice in your favor. I don't want to read the whole paragraph, but I just love this story so much. I love Jay Gatsby. I don't know. I just love it. That's a given. We all know the story of the Great Gatsby. Oh man, I've already been filming for 13 minutes and I still have like a couple more books to talk about. And by a couple, I mean like 8 or so. Another book I read recently is A Curse So Dark and Lonely, and originally I rated this 4.9 out of 5 stars because I was feeling extra stingy apparently with my stars. And then I went in and re-rated it. Can I say that? Is that a word? I don't know. 5 stars. It had one thing where I felt like it was lacking a little bit in the world building, but I loved this book so much that I was like, I also have to rate it based off of enjoyment. And if it's based off of enjoyment, 5 out of 5 stars. This is another fairy tale retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and I actually don't love fairy tale retellings. I don't reach for them. I don't gravitate towards the idea of a fairy tale retelling. So I was a little hesitant on this, but then it got raving reviews, and so I was so excited to read it on my own. Such a great story. Our main character, Harper, also has a mild, I guess you could call it mild case of cerebral palsy in her, and it affects her leg. She has a hard time walking. Sometimes it can get really weak at times, really painful at times. Anyways, this is such an incredible story with a lot of amazing representation, especially for disability, and we have some really incredible characters in this book. Loved it so much. I definitely recommend giving it a shot. If you aren't a big reader too, you might actually like this one. It was a quick read, very comprehensible, very fun. Loved it. 5 out of 5 stars. Okay guys, the next book I'm going to mention on this list is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I just read this last month. This was a 5 out of 5 star for me. If you don't know anything about this book, it's about like a boy and a girl. Kind of shows them a little bit as from when they were younger, but most takes place from when they're like in their high teenage years and up. And they are part of a challenge that they can't really comprehend, don't really understand. It all takes place within this circus. And I know that's like really kind of a vague description, but I can't really say much else without it being a giveaway. And also like, it's mysterious. That's a beautiful part of this book, is it's so mysterious and dark. I love this. I 100% want to reread it, but I'm making myself wait till October because I feel like it's a perfect book to read in a mysterious, dark, Halloween-y theme, kind of, even though there's nothing to do with Halloween really in it, except for one night is October 31st in this book, if I remember correctly. 5 out of 5 stars. Love this book so much. Would recommend. I want to talk about a book I read back in October, and I've also been itching to do a reread soon, and that is Moonflower by J.D. Slackert. I read this, like I said, October. I think I read this in about 4 days, and it is not terribly long. It is just under 360 pages long. This author, J.D. Slackert, he's actually an acquaintance of mine. Very, very incredible. Such a kind dude. Like, honestly, just one of the most stand-up dudes ever. He experienced something really horrible in his life. He lost one of his best friends, and when that happened, he decided to pour all of his thoughts and feelings and emotions into a story. So this is kind of an own voices story, I guess you could say. It is similar to things he experienced, although it does take on a completely different like form. But our main character is definitely just like created after JD. It is a college basketball athlete whose little sister is chronically ill, and it's basically him and his broken family and his best friends trying to help him cope with this. It is so beautiful. It's actually what got me out of my 3.5-year reading slump, so I highly recommend this book. You can buy it on Amazon for $14.99. I will leave the link down below. It's actually in the description box of all of my videos down in the Amazon links. It is such a good book. I highly recommend it. You will not regret spending $14.99 on this book, I can promise you that. And it's just so good. Highly recommend. 5 out of 5 stars. Duh. Been talking a lot. The last 5 books are 5 of my favorite books of all time, if not the top 5 favorite books of all time. I'm not really sure. Great Gatsby could be on that list too, but the 2 I'm about to show you are actually a series together. So if you wanted to count them as one, a lot of times I do. Yeah. And that is Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. by Leigh Bardugo. And it's funny because I did not like the first series she came out with. Actually, I really didn't like it. I thought about DNFing every book, but I was like, you gotta push through because I really wanted to read this. And I did push through and I loved it so much. These, like 100 pages into this book and I already knew it was gonna be a favorite book of all time. We have 6 very, very diverse characters, all from different backgrounds, all who have experienced different forms of heartbreak and different forms of lifestyles and families, and it's just, they're so good. Like every character is so good. I loved this book so much. It's basically a fantasy style version of Ocean's 11. That's actually what the author herself kind of describes it as. So it's just a heist style book with these 6 ragtag teenagers. And it's incredible. This was obviously the sequel to it, and it was just the most perfect way to end the series. I have heard that Leigh Bardugo is coming out with another one in this series, but like far in the future apparently. I don't know. I would read it. Duh. 2 of these characters, Kaz Brecker and Inej Gaffa, are 2 of my favorite characters from anything of all time, whether it be a book, a movie, a TV show, anything I've ever heard. 2 of my favorite characters of all time. Loved this series so much. If I could recommend something to you, it would definitely be these next books I'm talking about, including these 2. They're just so good. The next book I read back in December, and that is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This book, I actually remember, the reason I decided to pick this up was my friend here on BookTube, Majel. She was talking, I don't remember like if I went back on her Goodreads or something, like, oh, you know what? I think it was an old video of hers that I was watching, and she said that she was reading The Cruel Prince and it became a favorite book of 2018, and I was like, I should probably give it a shot, right? Like, it deserves a shot. I fell in love with this. I think I read it in 2 days. It definitely became a favorite book of all time. It is just so unique, and our main character is so different from what we're used to in fantasy, I feel like. How do I describe this? We have this main character named Jude, and one day, this guy basically kidnaps her and her sisters to go live in the world of Elfheim, I think is what it's called. Is that what it's called? Yeah, Elfheim. And she basically finds out that her older sister is not fully human, which she had kind of maybe assumed, but she was so young, she just didn't know. And she was part fairy, and so this book takes place in this fairy world, and we have our main character Jude, who wants to be a part of the fairy lifestyle, even though she's human, and she wants so desperately bad to be fairy, but she's also really bad and there's also this cruel prince, obviously, that Carden, love him. Anyways, if you want like a really fun, fast-paced, interesting read that you've never read anything like it before, The Cruel Prince instantly became a favorite book of all time. Like, I love that book. And the 3rd one comes out in November, and my sister and I are gonna do a reread like of the series before it comes out. I'm so excited. In November. Let's get to it. Okay, the last 2 books on this list are so important to me because they're actually what got me into reading. I read like some Harry Potter, I read Series 714 Events, but I wasn't like a reader. And then I read Twilight and I was like, okay, I can read this. You know, that was back in like freshman year. So I think it was before the last 2 Twilight books even came out. But I like, obviously, Twilight in high school was like everything. You know, we all loved it, let's be real. But then I decided to like branch out into other things. And then I found the book Graceling by Kristen Kishore. This is unlike, well, at the time it was unlike anything I'd ever read before. I feel like not a lot of fantasy even now is like this. I feel like this kind of kickstarted a new version of fantasy where our main characters are these like bad females who like are gonna make up their own fates, you know, like they're gonna take it in their own hands. I love this. Basically, in this world there are these people who are graced. They're called Gracelings, and they have 2 different color eyes, and they have a special trait which they excel at exceedingly. And our main character here, Katza, which is the reason why my cat's name is Katza, her grace is killing. So she is actually basically the property of the king, who I believe is like her uncle, if I remember correctly. I don't know, it's been a while since I've read this. And she is basically like a assassin for him, and she hates her grace. Like literally, she hates the idea that she was just born to be a killer. She wants to be more, she wants to mean more, you know what I mean? Like something a little bit more meaningful than just murdering people. She meets this other person named Poe, love him, whose grace is like combat fighting. So they like go hand in hand really well together because she's obviously like this insane killer and he's this insane fighter. So they end up befriending each other, and if it's not already obvious, a little bit more emotions ensue than just friendship, and just it really got me into reading. But this is not my favorite book of all time. That is coming next. 5 out of 5 stars obviously for that book though. And then so Kristen Kishore came out with Graceling, and then a couple years later or a year later, I'm not really sure, she came out with a book called Fire. Now, to be 100% honest with you, I don't know if this is still my favorite book of all time because of nostalgia, or if it's just, it still would, like if I were to pick this book up today, would it still be my favorite book of all time? I don't know. Like if I were to pick this book up today and read it for the first time, like I had never read it before, would it still be my favorite book of all time? I don't know. But because of nostalgia and the way I felt while reading this as like a 16, 17-year-old girl, like it's my favorite book. Look how like yellow the edges are. Oh my gosh. Like it's just so used up. This is actually the only book I've ever like annotated in, and I say annotated really loosely because I took my favorite pen at the time, and can you even tell? Right here I like have underlined my favorite parts. This takes place in the same realm as Graceling, but it actually is like a prequel kind of like some odd years before, like many years before. So there are graces like in Graceling, but they don't live in this land really, like they don't really know much about them in this land. But there are these things called monsters, and monsters are exceptionally beautiful creatures that like draw in regular humans, and they can be deadly. So our main character, Fire, she is a monster, but she's half monster, half human, but she's just supposedly like the most beautiful woman in the world with this fire red hair. And one day somebody basically tries to kill her and it doesn't work, and then all of this other stuff ensues. Not only is she insanely beautiful, she also has the unique ability to control minds. It's just part of her like trait as being a monster. We have the prince named Prince Brigand, who comes in to basically request her mind control capabilities, and she's very hesitant and she doesn't want to do that, but obviously, you know, stuff happens. There's a love story, it's brilliant. It has a very fantasy medieval feel, but it's not like, I don't know how to describe it. It's brilliant. I think if you like stories like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, you would really like both Graceling and Fire. They obviously have very different themes, very different characters, but it is somewhat similar, like the world and the feel of the story, like the feel of the fantasy world. I said the same thing like 5 times. Anyways, obviously it's 5 out of 5 stars. I've read it, I think, all over 5 times, like the full thing from start to finish 5 times. So clearly I love it a lot. It's the only book I've read that many times. So if you have any other questions about it, you should just ask me down below because I love to talk about it. Honestly, any of these books, but no. We've been chatting a lot today, and I hope you are still here. If you are, thank you so very much. If you have any of the same thoughts about any of these books, let me know down below in the description box. I'd love to chat with you guys down there. I'm always really good at responding to comments and chatting with you guys down there, so make sure to do that. Also, if you're new here, I'd love to have you guys subscribe, join the family. It'd be fun to have you here. There's about to be a lot of travel vlogs because I'm going to Europe, and it's gonna be insane. So if you want to see those, follow me there, and follow my Instagram and Twitter where I post pretty actively, pretty regularly there as well. But I'm gonna let you guys go. Have a great morning, noon, evening, day, night, whenever happens to be there watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.